Hello, everyone. Today I have Dr. Johnathan Pritchett and Derrik Behler on to discuss if our physical health is a part of following Jesus in an everyday kind of way. So, does our Christian worldview comment on this topic? We'll be covering these questions and hearing a couple of stories of these gentlemen who have personal experience with making healthier choices and making the necessary changes to have healthier bodies. So I'm really excited to be talking with both Johnathan and Derrik about this. They have similar and yet different stories from what I've heard so far. So I'm going to ask both of you guys to introduce yourselves and share your quick version, like a short story of your fitness journey. And we can go more into detail about your stories throughout this conversation. So who wants to go first?
After you, Derrik.
Okay. So the way that all this kind of pertains to me, my fitness journey started back in high school. I was a two-sport athlete. I did soccer in the fall, track and field in the spring, and I was fit. I was in shape. I was a decent athlete. I was that guy that could basically eat whatever you wanted and never gain a pound. The person that everybody hates. But then once I graduated high school and my lifestyle wasn't as active, well, all that, lack of discipline with eating started to catch up to me, and just very slowly started gaining weight over the years. I would say from about the age of 19, like starting about 19, I started thinking like, okay, so this, my abs are kind of gone now. And then it's like, okay, I'm getting a little fluffy, and so just since late teens, early 20s, I've been wanting to lose weight, but frankly, just didn't really know how. And so that continued on throughout my 20s. When I was 22, I started working at a supplement shop that sold protein smoothies to people for like post-workout. We sold, health and fitness supplements, all that stuff. And I was giving people advice on weight loss and, what to do in the gym, how to work out and all that. And I was clueless on it and slowly gaining weight myself while trying to lose weight. So there was just, a huge irony there. And a lot of it is because of my misunderstanding about what I was being taught is the key to weight loss and, the advice that was given to me. And I'm sure that's stuff that we'll talk about later. But going into the fall of 2017 was when I hit my heaviest. I was about 260. I'm 6'3", so 260 isn't like morbidly obese, but I was chubby. And I would say it was probably about fall, at least late summer, maybe into the fall of that year is whenever I had tried so many different diets that I couldn't stick to. And then I heard about this thing. I was like, oh, intermittent fasting. I was like, I'll give that a try. And so I did. I just didn't eat anything until 1 o'clock, and I would eat whatever I wanted until 9 o'clock at night. I did that every day, and I lost about 25, maybe 30 pounds in the first about 4 months or so. So it worked really well, but then I plateaued, and, then what actually is required for weight loss is whenever it clicked for me. And so I was more steady after that. I lost about 50 pounds in the first year. And then, for the next 2 years, it was kind of up and down just because I was on the wagon, off the wagon so much with, just stuff going on in life. But then coming into 2021, I was about 207. And I had that goal ever since I started losing weight that I wanted to be 185. And so I really, dialed it in for 2021 last year. And, by the time 2022 came around, I was about 183, somewhere around that. So, really just, got it into my mind. I knew what to do. And it was just a matter of the discipline and following through to be able to do that. And so, we can go into more detail as you ask questions, but whenever I heard that Pritchett was going to be on this, I was like, that's going to be really interesting because I think we would agree about everything as far as fitness and nutrition and weight loss and stuff. But I think how we got to where we're at and like our experiences are very different because mine is very messy, very weird and just, it's like, what were you doing? You know, it's just, but just fighting and clawing, doing whatever I could just to get to that next step, you know? So I think his story is one that, you know, anybody watching this, follow his example more than mine. But I'm also the guy that's like, look, if I figured it out, you can too. So I'm okay with being that guy.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say follow everything that I do, but I mean, I would say follow most of what I do. but I mean, some things you got to find for yourself that, you know, there's give and take. Well, for me, I mean, I was active all the way up through my early to mid 20s. So I was, you know, go to the gym occasionally, but we had some fitness stuff at the house, and but I would go to the gym with friends, and I was in bands back then through probably until my mid 20s. I was doing various music groups, so that keeps you active, you know, when you're performing, and so you want to stay in good shape. But then as I began to go towards academics, I was a barber by trade, tended towards academics. I started to gain weight when I was in college and then seminary. And so then I had to lose all that. And then over the years, as I started working on my master's degree and then my doctorate, and then came to work to Trinity, I gained all the weight back and then some, and ended up the heaviest point in my life, because I'm only 5'8", and I got up to 220, which is morbidly obese. And it wasn't until my co-host from Trinity Radio and the president of the seminary I work for, Braxton Hunter, his dad came to me and said, "Son, you're getting fat and it's not good for you." and he said that, you know, he's in his 70s. He wasn't trying to be mean. It was out of concern. And I had been to the emergency room, and I was on about 4 or 5 different medications at the time, for high blood pressure and hypertension stuff. I was on a statin. My cholesterol was going through the roof. My PSA levels were starting to rise a little bit, not to where they were concerned about cancer, but they were said it's going up there, but you mix all that in with other stuff. And then I was very deficient in potassium and vitamin D and everything, because I never saw the sunlight because I was just in my office and then going home and just reading and stuff. And I had just gotten in really bad shape, and I was on anxiety medicine and all this stuff. And it was just crazy because for some reason the health issues compounded anxiety issues about my health. And that's a vicious cycle that you can get into with that. And so the second time I went to the hospital and then got out, that was when I made a decision that I needed to make a change and get healthy again. And I'd done it before, but I'd never gotten this far gone. And so it's in April of 2019 is when I decided that I needed to really take hold of this. And I started small. All I did was walk and mess with a couple of dumbbells at the house. And I started by walking in my backyard in circles because I was too scared to stray too far from the house in case I had a panic attack or something like that. Or you know, because you always think when you have heart issues plus a panic attack, you never know the difference between that. You know, as I was in bad shape. And so I never would stray too far from the house just out of fear, because I was worried that if I just collapsed or something, you know, they wouldn't know where I was. So I started doing that. And then by June of 2019, I had joined a gym. And then by October of 2019, I had lost 75 pounds by walking and exercising daily and changing my diet. So that's basically the nutshell version.
Okay, so what was the math? Like, how many years did it take you, like, from in your stories?
Well, to blow up to the biggest size, I guess I did that over 5 years or so. So I went, you know, I'd never seen myself at 220 pounds, and I have a small frame, right? So if you go to my channel or my Instagram page at Theology Geek Fitness on YouTube, you can see my transformation pictures. Mm-hmm. And I don't even look like the same person. If you watch Trinity Radio prior to 2019, and then you watch now. If you go back to watch the old videos, you can see a huge difference. I got thinner, Braxton got bigger, so that's what happened.
It's true.
Well, how long did it take you though to go down?
Oh, 6 months from April of 2019 to
6
October
months.
of 2019. I had dropped 75 pounds, and that's fast. But the way I am, and I don't know, I mean, I had to do it. And so if you were to talk to my family, if my family wanted to spend time with me when I got home from work, they had to spend time with me walking, because I was never going to run, especially at my heaviest. And I don't run now. But I had to do that. And I found ways since then to get my steps in without I actually have a little pedal station under my desk that I pedal on all day long. But I mean, but I was just getting into this, but I needed to walk, because cardio actually is better for getting the weight off than just going to the gym. You should do both. You should do some sort of resistance training and cardio and diet all at the same time to get weight off. But I went extreme simply because I wanted to be fixed. And so I just needed to get it over with. And I don't know if that works for everybody. Some people could probably do it more gradually in less time, because 75 pounds in 6 months, I mean, that was strict caloric diet and a lot of exercise. And it was literally hell. It was the hardest thing that I've probably ever done in my life. But I just wanted it over with. And so that's why I went like gung-ho about it.
Yeah.
Oops.
What about you, Derrik? Like, since Jonathan mentioned, so how long did it take you to, in his words, blow up? And then how long did it take you to like go back down?
Oh, I would say the blow up was about 8 years, just very steady increase, just little by little over the years, which is actually very normal for a lot of people. You don't just, gain 50 pounds in a year. Usually it's for most people who find themselves overweight. It is very gradual over the years, just kind of built up. And then once I started losing weight, it was about 4.5 years until I got to after a year, I was thin enough to be like, okay, I like what I've done. I'm in a good place. I can wear all the clothes that I want to wear. But to get to the shape I'm in now, it was about 4.5 years to finally just dial it in and get it done to where I'm satisfied.
Okay, so I guess we should say, the typical disclaimer: we're not doctors, so consult with your doctors. But we're just going to speak, in generalizations, and based on our stories, it seems that it's going to be a different experience for everyone. And maybe for the people that don't get it in under 6 months, you can look up to Derrik's story, which he got it done, even though it took a little longer. I wasn't going to, but I think I might just include my story, sort of, because it might be a little different for women. I always didn't know much about nutrition. I didn't go to the best schools. My parents weren't necessarily those parents that get up in the morning and they prepare you your healthy meal and pack it, and you go to, elementary or whatever. We were really poor immigrant family. So I remember going to high school and just eating a cookie, and that was my lunch. And not because I didn't get free meals at school, but because I was embarrassed, just kind of immature at that age. And I was just kind of embarrassed, or I just felt like I could go without eating. And that was normal. So I was always underweight. And I started to feel kind of happy. I entered a relationship when I was 14 years old. It didn't last at all, but it was like a happy moment in my teenager life, and I started to eat more of my mom was really good at giving us meals when we got home from school. So I started to gain a little more weight. There was this lady from church, and I don't know if it's normal in their culture. Latin America it's just because we speak sort of the same language doesn't mean that we all think and all of our, our culture is the same. So apparently this lady thought it was a normal thing to point out to my mom that I looked fat, that I looked like I was gaining weight, and I wasn't like obese. I was just a little bigger. And it wasn't really a problem, but to a teenager, that sounded like, oh my gosh, I need to like lose this weight. So I stopped eating and I went back to my not eating healthy. Fast forward a few years later, my health teacher singled me out and asked me to write down, what are you eating? Because you're really thin. And I wrote it down and he's like, no, this is not enough. So anyway, eventually I got pregnant. I was 106, and that's like almost underweight at my height. I'm 5'2.5". And so when you're pregnant, all of a sudden you're just always hungry, and it's stressful because you just ate and you're hungry again. So I gained so much weight. I gained like twice the amount that is recommended for pregnant women to gain. Breastfeeding helped lose that weight. Had another child, got sick, stomach issues. Wasn't back to my able to eat food again without issues until recently. Started anxiety medication, noticed my weight going up. And now it's been so hard to go back down, just like how I used to be able to. So I'm older. I'm 35. So metabolism and everything. So I'm at a place where I am wanting to pursue this healthy lifestyle and be educated on, hey, what do we really need to eat? Because we live in a place where it's like all fast food, right? Everywhere. And so then recently someone, again, maybe their culture, pointed out, wow, you look beautiful. And I was like, whoa, this person is complimenting me. And they said, the weight really looks good on you. And then as a woman, I mean, we deal with a lot of insecurity, right? I'd be interested in hearing if you guys deal with insecurity as well. But so there was two ways, you can take that. I could take it as my immature, naive teenager self and just get a bunch of complex, and just think of myself as fat and all of that. Or I can just continue with my goals and pursue a healthy lifestyle. So that's my story, and I do think it's like really complicated sometimes for some women because of the having children and all of the pressures and stuff, as we're going to talk about later on in the conversation. But I guess maybe I should ask you guys: do men deal with insecurity, like kind of like how I described my personal story?
Well, yes and no. Probably not in the same way. I know that when I was heavier, I was insecure about it. You see a lot of guys who are, especially when they're over 30, let's say, and they still walk around with their shirts untucked, dressing like teenagers, thinking that it's covering a gut that it doesn't cover. It's not fooling anyone. And so I understand. I've been there. And one of the reasons why, like on Trinity Radio, we always wore t-shirts, but we always wore a blazer or a sports coat over it, was just to cover our, my belly. And it's just, I was insecure about it because I'd never been that way before, not to that degree. But it's not like, I thought about it all the time. It was just, you only think about it when you're around people who are in better shape than you are. And so when I had gotten to my heaviest, I was sitting next to Braxton, who was pretty real thin. He used to skateboard to work every day and all that. He was really active. And so it can kind of make you say, you need to get it together because, And so now the shoe's on the other foot, and I'm always telling him to get it together. But yeah, I mean, but it's probably not as severe as it is with women, because there's a lot more social pressures on women to look a certain way, and people act like it's not, and people act like they have all this kind of body positivity stuff. But anytime you get past the surface of all that, you find that people really, especially women, it's a lot of compensating for insecurity. And so and having lived with a woman now for close to 22 years, I know that women go through stages, post pregnancy and all of that other stuff, and their body changes and metabolism slows. And so I know that they can act like it doesn't bother them, but then it does. But the flip side is there's a part of men that after, there's that period after a couple months when a woman has a baby, that her body is probably the best it's ever been in their life, for obvious reasons. But because men don't like skinny girls at all, or at least a lot of men don't. So there's that. And so watching them feel insecure when you're like, what are you talking about? I imagine it's just a hassle for women.
Yeah, I would say that pretty much echoes my thoughts as well, especially about, like, I don't know. I think that there's almost, whether it's, unconscious or not, there's almost an idea in some women's minds almost that their physical appearance does confer some sort of value on them as a whole, to where it's like, I think guys do that too. And I know that I was insecure about myself whenever I was my heaviest, but it's just, I can't imagine it's to the same degree, because like whenever I was my heaviest, my best friend, could see me take my shirt off and be like, "Ooh, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, you need to work on that," and I'd laugh it off, and I wouldn't carry that over, but every now and then, like, say I was around somebody that I graduated high school with, or, I was with my friends who are fit or something like that, or I see a picture of myself and it's like, "Ooh, you can kind of see my gut there, can't you?" It's like, I didn't like that, but I think guys are more likely to just kind of own it whenever it happens to them.
Yeah.
And I mean, some guys, they're like, that's their persona. Like, think of Jack Black or Kevin James, they're just the chubby, funny guys, like it's just part of who they are.
Yeah. It's for guys, we oscillate between the don't care and like big time insecurity, but at least you had somebody who would tell you to get it together. It took a 70-year-old man to take a look at me and say, because a lot of the people nowadays, they don't want to be confrontational about it. And I mean that in a neutral way, not in a antagonistic way, but just to say something to someone about, hey, you have a problem. But then again, because of the rate of obesity in the United States has gone up, there's more people in bad shape than there is in good shape now. So maybe there's just not a lot of people to encourage you. So that could be a thing.
Yeah. So what do you think, that there's a lack of education on having a healthy lifestyle? I was listening to a show and they were talking about like how obese Americans are, and how it's kind of, they made it sound like it's a scheme to get Americans so unhealthy that they're going to have to buy the medications. And what do you think?
I don't know what Derek thinks about this, but this is what there's no lack of education out there about healthy habits. It's a lack of effort on people to seek out the education. There is something to the fact that our portion sizes are ridiculous compared to other places in the world. I don't know that there's a grand conspiracy about that. It's just, I think it's matching the habits and the consumer desires of people who are going to restaurants and all of that, and they're just meeting that demand. So I don't think there's a lack of information or education. I think there's a lack of concern. Everyone knows that obesity related mortalities and deaths and illnesses, it's like number one, right? There's no doubt about it. It's just people don't care until it directly affects them. And So I heard someone say that the best thing that you could do is hit rock bottom sooner rather than later so that you get it taken care of. Now, in the church specifically, just in Christian circles, there is a lack of emphasis in this. And I think that lack of emphasis comes from the culture that church has created, to where, because so many people struggle with this issue in the church, they don't want to hear anything about it. So you can hear a pastor who says, oh, he preaches the full counsel of God, and he gets up there and bravely, he's not brave at all, just in a conservative evangelical church, to thunder against the LGBT community and abortion. That's not brave. You're not saying anything that nobody disagrees with. But they'd rather hear about that than hear about something that hits closer to home, and things like gluttony and sloth. Because as I've said, it's not a sin to be overweight. I don't believe that. I don't believe that it's a sin to be fat or obese or even morbidly obese. But what I do believe is that it is foolish, which is a sin, because if you read the wisdom literature and you find a lot of the foolishness is people who are idle. Foolishness is wrapped up in people who are gluttonous, right? Foolishness is in laziness and sloth. And of course, I have to tell people think that they're busy, and that means that they're not lazy. Or if they go to work every day, that means they're not lazy. But busy doesn't mean that you're not lazy, because lazy people can busy themselves with all sorts of things. So, I mean, even the Bible equates that kind of thing. So if you look at if you look at 1 Timothy 5:13, says, besides that, they learn to be idlers. I mean, idle, like IDLE, going about house to house, not only idlers, but gossips and busybodies, right? I mean, that's the way we translate those words. And of course, in 2 Thessalonians, for we hear that some of you walk in idleness, not busy at work, but busybodies, right? So people who think they have a lot on their plate ends up being watching 5 hours of Netflix every night. But people think that they're so busy, but busy doesn't mean that you're not lazy. And so when we talk about obesity, it's important to understand that the number one source of this is food, right? And not just the food choices, but the portions. And gluttony is reasonably defined as eating more than what's necessary for you. And laziness or sloth can reasonably be defined not burning off the energy that you consume, right? And so it's not a sin to be fat, but it seems like that sin and foolishness is involved with what gets us to that point, making foolish decisions. Like the whole wisdom corpus of Scripture is about living in harmony with a fallen creation in service to God. That's really what it is. From Psalms, Proverbs to Ecclesiastes and Job, those are all talk. Even Song of Songs a little bit. There's more romance, but the wisdom corpus is about living in harmony with God's creation, serving God, recognizing that it's fallen. And so you see a lot of things about idleness and folly and gluttony and all of that. I mean, Proverbs 23:2, one of my favorites, is put a knife to your throat if you are given to appetite, right? He's talking about sitting down with the king and all of his food looks really good to eat and all that. He's like, put a knife to your throat if you're given. So you think that's a verse I think of whenever someone says, let's go to the Golden Corral, right? And belly up to the trough. So, I mean, it's one of those things that I think that Christians need to take this more seriously, because there's no Bible verse that says be fit and eat healthy, but there's a wisdom in Scripture that, going back to the garden, that it was plants that he gave us to eat. Now, I'm not saying be vegetarian. I'm not far from. I'm a carnivore all the way. I like both meat and vegetables. But there's a sense about, if you look at the Mediterranean diet in the first century, I mean, obesity wasn't much of a problem for most people because they walked everywhere and they ate organic food and their meat was fish most of the time. So there's a reason why the Bible didn't specifically address this directly, but you can get a sense of indirect wisdom from tangible things, like when they discuss things like gluttony, and when they accused Jesus of being a glutton and a drunkard, they were trying to communicate something negative about him, and it obviously wasn't true, but that's what they were trying to do. There's a thing, there's a bad thing attached to both of them, because it violates all the wisdom corpus about idleness and gluttony and all of that. So we have to think about it in those terms. And then you have to think about it in terms of a theology of the human body. This is something that the Psalter said is fearfully and wonderfully made. You can see that the human body was something that God formed from the dust at the very beginning, chapter 2 of the Bible, right? In Genesis. The body is something that we read in 1 Corinthians 15 that is worthy to be resurrected and even made better and glorified. It's worth saving. It's not about getting rid of this earthly tent and then going to be a disembodied soul. The human body is a gift from God. And so we need to be a steward of this body so that we can be fit, as my friend Cody Wheeler says, fit for your tasks in service to God and others in the church. So there's my sermon.
Yeah, no, and I'm really glad that you went off on that, because I figured you had done more in the way of, like, from a scriptural perspective. Whenever I was coming into this, I was like, I think I'm just going to let Pritchett roll on that, because I honestly don't have anything to add to that, what you just said from like a theological Christian standpoint. But to the question of a lack of education, I think that another big problem is, not only are people not doing their due diligence to seek out the information, there's a lot of really bad information out there. Like, weight loss is remarkably simple. I didn't say easy. I know Pritchett likes to say it's simple, it's not easy, but I mean, it comes down calories in versus calories out. Be a steward to what you're putting into your body, but also get up and move more, right? But I think that people tend to have this idea in their minds, and this is what held me back for so long in my weight loss journey, was because I had so much in my mind that just wasn't true. And so I think that there's this misunderstanding for most people that weight loss is very complicated, and you just got to find that one magic formula that works for you or something like that. And people seize upon that to, usually they're going to sell you some sort of miracle supplement. They got some special workout, I think you just put out a video, something like that might be similar to that, like, 6-minute abs, do this for 2 weeks and you'll have abs, garbage like that.
Right.
So like a miracle supplement, a miracle exercise routine, or a miracle diet that they want you to continue to come to them to give them views or to buy their product, so they seize upon what is actually really simple and complicated. That way they can sell you this shortcut or a hack, to help you do it faster. And what I tell people is, I'm like, weight loss it's simple, not easy. It's simpler than people realize, but it also, unless you're Johnathan Pritchett, usually takes longer than most people think. Because, like I said, I lost 50 pounds in the first year, which, seems significant. But if you pull that back to a smaller scale, that's 1 pound a week on average. And to a lot of people, you dial it in for a week and you go really well. And then you look on the scale and, you might even be right around where you were, just in like carrying extra water weight or something like that, something deceptive. And you're like, oh my gosh, this isn't working. 1 pound a week doesn't sound like a lot, but, stretch that out over a year, that's 50 pounds, So for some people like me, it was kind of more of a marathon like that. But I think that I was absolutely bogged down with just a lot of bad information as well. So kind of more on that point about lack of education on the matter.
Yeah, if you decrease your caloric intake or eat the same thing and add, some cardio just to work it off, they say roughly 3,500 calories equals a pound of body weight. Now that's going to be a mix of muscle and fat and whatever. But 3,500 calories equals, I think. The reason why I picked a target weight, I picked my start weight, and I figured it's basic math. I figured out, this is why I debate everyone who wants to knock CAICO, calories in, calorie out, because I picked a number. I wanted to weigh 145, because that was what the normal range for someone with my height and weight index should be. And so I figured, well, how long is it going to take? And so I did the numbers, and if I lost 2.5 pounds a week, roughly, it would take me 6 months to get to there. Now, like you said, if you lose a pound a week, you could still lose 50 pounds in a year. You're going to be a year older anyway, so you don't have to go crazy like I went, right? But either way, a year from now, you're going to be a year older. You want to be 50 pounds lighter or more or not? That's a question people need to ask themselves. And to do it slower is probably better for most people, unless you're just like me and you want to get it over with and you're willing to just suffer, and because it sucks. It really did. But it's taken me. I got down to 145, and now it's taken me about 2.5 years, and I'm finally up to 164. But if you look at my picture on my group, on my YouTube channel of me at 145 and 164, you can barely tell a difference when it's muscle. Muscle does weigh more than fat, but I mean, trying to get big without taking a bunch of performance enhancing drugs it's just not in the cards for me, because I packed on almost 20 pounds in the last 2.5 years since I got all the weight off. But if you look at me, you wouldn't even just my 145 to my 165. When I took the picture, I was down a pound, which was upsetting today. But because now I'm trying to pack on muscle, right? But you can barely tell the difference between them. But if you want to see what 20 pounds looks like when it's body fat, there's a huge difference in what your physique looks like. So that's interesting, but you don't have to go crazy. But if you're overweight, you need to do something, because it's not just a matter of looking better, right? It's a matter of feeling better. It's a matter of having more energy. It's having more clarity of thought. I'm on no medications now, and I've had like one very, very mild panic attack that I got past in about 15 minutes in the last 2.5 years, and it was very mild. So I'm not going back on the meds just because of that one little instance, because for the most part, since I got my cholesterol, my blood pressure, all of that is all fixed. You get rid of this brain fog that you didn't realize that you had when you are overweight or morbidly obese like I was. And so every aspect of your life, your spiritual health, your mental health, your emotional health, all of that improves. And a lot of it has to do with just maintaining a healthy body weight. And a lot of it has to do with the kinds of chemicals that we either put in our body from these processed foods, or eating things that are more closer to their natural habitat. So I always tell people that if you can't kill it or grow it or find it in nature, don't eat it, or at least don't eat much of it. Like, I mean, of course I cheat and whatever. You can't grow pancakes and syrup. I get it. I mean, you can not the sugar-free syrup. I mean, I use the sugar-free syrup. I don't use that stuff right out of the tree, right? Because that's the maple's got a lot of sugar in it. But I mean, but for the most part, you should eat vegetables. You should eat, whole foods and meats and stuff. And I don't spend. People said it's costs a lot of money to eat healthy. It does not. I don't go to Whole Foods. I don't go to whatever those organic. I don't eat much organic anything. I buy my meat from Rulers, which is kind of like an Aldi's. It's like a Kroger outlet store, right? But I meal prep most of my meals except for dinner, because my wife cooks dinner. We still eat as a family at home. So but she makes relatively healthy meals. But I prep all of my meals, and my meals cost me for lunch. It costs me, even with after inflation, it's only $1.55. It used to be $1.32. Now it costs me $1.55 to eat my lunch. And people go spend $10-12 on their lunch break every day, putting garbage in their mouth. And I'm eating chicken or ground turkey or salmon or tilapia. Not so much anymore tilapia, because if you get it from China, it's bad. But cod or steak I'm eating that with either rice or potato or quinoa and some broccoli or asparagus or something really good, or just some fried cabbage or something. So I'm eating a better food that tastes better, that's better for me. And it shakes out if you buy all your food like that and you prep it. It costs me $1.55 to eat my lunch. So I eat on about, when you add in my lunch, my dinner, my breakfast, and my protein shakes, I eat on like less than $7 a day. And that's less than what some people will spend eating one meal a day out.
Yeah. And so that's like part of being financially responsible too,
Yeah.
trying to improve on your finances.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Eating healthy actually saves you money if you do it right. I have a whole video on my Theology Geek Fitness on what you should buy. And yes, I eat a lot of the same things every day.
Mhm.
But if you lived in biblical times, you're eating bread and fish and greens, right? That's your basic your diet for the most part. We've become so spoiled
Mhm.
that one of the things that helped me lose weight was divorcing my relationship with food, because we have become accustomed that we need to eat something different for every meal, and it needs to the worse it is for you, the better it tastes. We get all these dumb sayings in our mind, but we actually live that out, and then everyone hates the way that they feel. They hate the way that they look. And then, because like what Derrik was talking about with all the social media stuff trying to sell you fads, it's not just that, but you get body dysmorphia looking at all of the bodies that have been enhanced by not just photoshopping, but just enhanced with chemicals. If I looked at myself next to, Jay Cutler or something like that, thinking that if I followed a certain workout routine, I'm going to be as big as him or Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mhm.
Sorry, my light keeps going. I'm never going to look like that. I'm about to my genetic potential.
Mhm.
We all have a genetic limit to where you're just not going to get any bigger. Just like you're not going to ever get any taller. I'm not going to get any more muscular. I might gain another pound or two, but you get most of your, like when you first start working out, you get most of what's called newbie gains. You get 85 to 90% of as big as you're ever going to get. You're going to get in the first 3 years. And then it's going to be centimeter by centimeter, and you just give up. Those are genetic limits. But the good news is, no matter what your genetics is, no matter what the density of your fat cells are, you can get as lean as you can, no matter what that is, just by eating healthy and to lose weight, getting in a caloric deficit. Mm-hmm. So I realize that I'm never going to get massive, but I can always get ripped. The goal is not to get ripped, but actually what happens is when you're disciplined, and self-discipline is one of the fruit of the Spirit. When you're disciplined, it just happened to, I never set out to get ripped. It just, that became, and I'm not trying to brag on myself, oh, look at me, I'm ripped, but I actually am. And I am at 45, and it's just a byproduct of diet and of a good nutrition strategy and daily exercise. And it just happens. And so I'm not saying everyone's going to get the same results if they just eat right and exercise, but a byproduct of it is not just being at a healthy weight, but it's actually being fit. And so I don't tell people to lose weight just to lose weight. I tell people to get fit and healthy, not just healthy, but fit. Because if you look at our body's designs, it's obvious what God's original design was. It wasn't to be big and massive and muscular or whatever, but it wasn't meant to be even flabby. It was meant to be efficient. And our body is incredibly efficient at things. And when you treat it right, it will treat you back right, So anyway, I'll get off that.
Oh yeah, I like it. I like the rolling.
I was thinking that's good advice for women too. Except like for women, there's like all of these other things where you might just never ever look like another woman, or what is considered to be the most beautiful woman, like your figure, your curves, your sizes, your measurements. And I think that is a lot of that worldly, how the world has a degradation view about the human body. And it's not like the Christian worldview where you're saying we're stewards of our body and pretty much we should just do our best, to be fit, to be strong, to look
Yeah.
the best that we can.
Well, if it'll make you feel better, guys have body dysmorphia too when they're comparing themselves to others. The goal is, like I said, it's not necessarily to get ripped, but having a decent physique is a byproduct of taking care of your body. But if you look at men, they all suffer from this body, especially the more they get into fitness and they look at Instagram and they look at fitness influencers online. Like, you look at Gymshark athletes and all of that stuff. It happens to men just like it happens to women. The goal should be to be the best version of yourself, and really it does wonders, like I said, not just for your self-confidence and your physical appearance, but for your mental health and your spiritual health. It helps with all of it. So don't compare yourself to other people, but be the best version of yourself that you can be, and that should be the goal. But yeah, we don't need to be worldly where they try to give standards that no one can meet. And by the way, those people can't meet them without Photoshop and performance enhancing drugs either. But the goal for us in the church, while it's not that, one of the problems is we don't have goals in the church. And one of our goals is to start having goals, right? Does that make sense? Because the church has gone the other direction. Instead of being so completely superficial like the world, the church has become so Gnostic, as if our bodies don't matter, that we don't want to talk about it. And one of the things that we've adopted from the world is this idea that you should love yourself no matter what. Well, you should love yourself no matter what, but you should love yourself enough to be better than you are physically as it pertains to your health. But loving yourself as willfully being, and I'm not talking about people with medical conditions, I'm not talking about people with handicap or special able, or I'm not talking about that, just the average person. There's a right way to love yourself and a wrong way to love yourself. And the wrong way to love yourself is to glorify yourself in all of your folly, which is what it is. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's folly to be gluttonous and lazy, and that leads overwhelmingly to obesity at some point in your life. And like I said, it's not a sin to be obese, but it is a sin. I think it misses the mark to choose foolishness over wisdom. And so in the church, we become so Gnostic that our bodies don't matter. All that matters is escaping this body to be disembodied in heaven, instead of looking past that to the new heavens and new earth. And so we have a Gnostic attitude towards our body, that the physical doesn't matter at all. And that's not a Christian worldview either. That was the Gnostic idea, that the body's evil and fleshly, not worthy of us anyway. We best to escape it. That kind of Neoplatonist Gnostic idea is not, and it's not even Platonist, it's Neoplatonist, but it's not Christian. And so the Christians, we need to take ownership of our physical health, recognize how it ties into all of our mental and spiritual and emotional health as well, and do better to be as fit and healthy as you can be. I'm not saying be fit and as healthy as Derrik is, or as a Instagram model. Be as fit and as healthy as you can be. And so, that should be our telos when it comes to our Christian living. That should be our goal for our bodies.
Yeah, I remember when I was college years, I had a part-time, and I worked at this elementary school as a daycare aide, and I did a lot of walking. Like on summers, we would go on all of these places where you take the kids, and like I would come home and I would go on a date with my now husband, and I remember getting in the car and my legs were just hurting so bad because of all the walking I would do. And I mean, I guess that's why I was like, a skinny also, even though I would eat like cheeseburgers from Carl's Jr. But after having the kids, I guess I didn't realize, hey, I used to do a lot of walking in college too, like large campuses. And now being a stay-at-home mom, sure, I'm doing a lot. I'm very busy, but there wasn't like this, let's go ahead and maintain that amount of exercise, that amount of walking that I used to do. And so little by little, I definitely think that affected my mental health for sure. Moms go through so much mentally, you're just worried all the time because you have to take care of your kids. So you have to try to like prevent all the bad stuff. So that's already going to mess with your mind. And then you're not exercising enough. You're not doing the healthy things like relaxing and finding something, getting out of the house, things like that. And so I got into like the worst shape that I had ever been, like physically. I remember getting on the treadmill and I could barely I could barely walk on like 0.1. I'm not even kidding. And I could barely do 5 minutes on the treadmill. It was that bad. And I had so much anxiety. I had allergies. And so all of that just kind of triggered my anxiety. I totally relate with what you were talking about, Jonathan, about how there's this fear about even walking around your block. And but now, like, it did take me I would say months, right? But little by little, pushing my body a little more, I noticed, wow, I'm healthier. My mind is in a better place. So it definitely isn't an issue of just like looking better, like you said, Jonathan. It's going to help you in so many other ways, and that's going to help you be a better parent. You don't want to have to deal with all of those mental issues and like just like pretty much not be able to be there for your kids emotionally or as physically and things like that. It affects their own experience, in life and their own mental health. It can be scary for kids to see their parents, struggling with things. And like I remember just being in such a bad place. Like sometimes I would even call an ambulance. It was like that bad. And so I feel like exercise, even just walking on a treadmill, it's made a huge difference for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's an important point in that is that even if it starts out really small, it's still going to help you, right? Like I wasn't somebody who was able to just cannonball into the pool. I had to dip my toe in a little bit first. And even to this day, Jonathan's talking about healthy eating, and I think he would roll his eyes at a lot of stuff that I'm still consuming. But
I do when you post it on Facebook.
I think I think she saw it on Instagram. I posted on my Instagram story. I was like, "Hey, this is my dinner tonight." And it was 2 frozen pizzas, but but that's my indulgence. That's not typical, but it's my indulgence. So I'm working on that. But I will say that I don't remember the last time I had a regular pop. And I'm in Missouri. We say pop. I don't remember the last time I ate fast food. But there was never a point where I was like, Derrik, you can't have pop anymore. You can't have fast food. It's just as I was progressing in this fitness journey that was just it. My mentality gradually changed along with it to where I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I could drink that 12-ounce pop and, there's 150 calories of nothing, yeah, it's fun while it lasts, but once it's gone, that could be 150 calories that could go towards, my dinner being slightly bigger and slightly more satisfying, something like that. Or, I could go to Taco Bell. I love my Taco Bell probably as much as Eric Hernandez does. But if I saw that face, if I were to go to Taco Bell, I could consume 1,500 calories easily. And then it's like, what do I get to eat for the rest of the day to still stay within that range? So I'm still baby stepping my way to healthier eating. And I would say I'm probably about 65-70% healthy, and then sometimes I'll indulge a little bit, but it all starts with those little baby steps. Because one of the reasons I couldn't lose weight at first, sorry, my camera, like my phone's not staying up. One of the reasons I wasn't able to lose weight at first is because I was under the impression I could no longer eat anything with sugar in it, any Hot Pockets, any pizza, macaroni. I was like, I can never eat that again. We're talking salad, chicken, broccoli, rice. Like that's what I thought I needed to do to lose weight. And that's not what it was. I mean, had I stuck to that, I would have lost weight because I naturally would have eaten less, but just misunderstandings like that. But whenever you get the little baby step at a time is how I worked my way to where I'm at now. Like I lost my first probably 30 pounds before I even set foot in a gym. And then from there, I was able to, increase the calories out by going to the gym, doing a little running or biking and, lifting and stuff like that. And then I was able to, restrict my eating window a little bit more, because now I've had that much more progress. So I was that much more excited so I could take it to the next step. It all starts with taking that one step that you can make and then just building from there. Right. And so I think that was a really good point. Like, even if you're on the treadmill going at the minimal speed, that's better than nothing. Right.
Yeah. Yesterday I went to 3.5. I don't know if it's the same numbers on all treadmills, but I was at 3.5 and I was able to do like 1 hour, like walking really fast, which I wouldn't have been able to do like last year. And I know other people with health issues probably also like dread, getting on a treadmill. But yeah, little by little, your body will say, "Hey, you can do more." So that's
I
cool.
hate treadmills.
Yeah.
I'm famous for saying treadmills are stupid.
Mm.
I like to go out and walk outside. I my wife loves treadmills, but I
Yeah.
just can't stand there on a treadmill and go nowhere.
I watch Netflix. I watch to distract myself,
Yeah, well, no, that's good though. Like I haven't been to a gym since March of 2020 when they all closed down. And I don't work out at gyms anymore. I work out either here in my office or at home or wherever I want. I don't even lift weights, except unless you count like a sandbag a weight.
Mhm.
Like I don't use dumbbells or kettlebells or anything like that. And I've made most of those 20 pounds of muscle that I've gained over the last 2 years has come from resistance bands and suspension trainers and a sandbag and some other little odds and end, pull-up bar, whatever weight does. It doesn't take a lot. And you don't even have to go to a gym if you don't want to. Once I got some home gym stuff and figured, and cheap home gym stuff, like when I first started looking into this stuff, I mean, everything was sold out, but I was like, well, if I wanted to buy weights and a rack and all this other stuff, I looked at it's going to cost like thousands of dollars for this stuff. I was like, nope. So I tried other things and found what I liked and just stuck with that. And it works for me. Again, I always tell people, do what you like. If you like to go to the gym, go to the gym. If you like treadmills, get on a treadmill. If you like kettlebells, buy a couple of kettlebells or use them at the gym. If you like resistance bands, use those. If you like to do body weight exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, if you like to go run around and play a sport, do something to stay active, But I think with what Derrik was saying about food, I mean, like I said, I have my own cheats. But even then, because I'm such a believer in the calorie in, calorie out, that I incorporate my cheats into, rough and ready estimate of what my daily calories, which for me is probably higher than a lot of people because of my activity level. But I look at it and I work that in. I know that it's garbage, but yeah, you got to stay sane. You should be good for the most part, but reward yourself for being good for the most part with the junk. Because I mean, it's but I think for a while, I always tell people that if you're trying to lose weight, which is what a lot of people find themselves into, you've eaten what you've wanted to for years that got you into this position. It's time to stop that for a while. And I tell people to cold turkey it. Yeah, you need to ease into some of the exercise stuff, but you've done it your way and ate whatever you want, and that's why you're here. Right? That's why you're in the shape that you're in. You spoiled yourself. It's time to do differently, for the most part, at least, because your way got you into a bad situation. That you want to change. Change is good, but I always tell people that you need. And one of the reasons why people don't ever take hold of it is I think we're so adverse to willful suffering. And I use suffering just in a strict sense, that when you have something taken away, when you have to put yourself through physical exertion that's not required, nobody's paying you to do this, it's going to be uncomfortable, especially when you start. And being hungry, you're used to satisfying that hunger pain. You're just going to have to, you're just going to have to suffer. You've coasted this long, and it's actually destroying your life, and you're going to probably take 10 years, die sooner. I know everyone has the 97-year-old smoker grandma, but that's the exception. That's not everybody. 97 smokes 3 packs a day and weighs 270 pounds, and she's 5'1". I know that they always trot her out, but that's not most people, right? You're going to die sooner if you don't get a hold of this, if you're morbidly obese. So for people to start out, I think you do need to make an about face, and you need to embrace the fact that it's going to suffer. But I think part of our church culture even is we don't have a context of suffering. I know that there is some sort of mild persecutions towards the Christians and Christian worldview, but as far as like physical discomfort, Christians seem to try to avoid that insofar as it's not related to any work that they have to do. And that's only people who actually do what I call real work, because I don't consider what Derrik and I do real work. I mean, it's a real job, but I mean, I'm not laying cinder block, and I have done that, and that's real work. That's why I got the job that I have, so I don't have to do real work. If you want to know the truth, but I think you have to recognize that if you want to take control of your life, it will involve pain. It will involve some suffering. It will involve self-denial, and it will involve self-discipline. And those are things that I think are lacking because of modern comfort.
Mm-hmm. And that's how people sell their programs, is to be a shortcut around that suffering that you have to go through, right? And so, like I mentioned earlier that intermittent fasting is what got me to lose weight, and I still do that. It works well for me, but it wasn't a magic bullet. It was just something that worked for me, that got me into a calorie deficit. It's not for everybody. I don't think Pritchett really likes it that much, but
actually, I do think it's great for weight loss. The problem is I didn't try it until after I did my first bulk and cut thing, before I discovered just maintaining. And what had happened is I tried it, and it worked so well that I lost a lot of my muscle gains, as well as my, I was just trying to lose a couple percentage of body fat. So I'm actually a big believer in intermittent fasting. I don't know that a lot of people can do it, because I mean, a lot of people can't just eat within an 8-hour time period, because they're like me. I was used to eating all day, which is what I still do. I eat every 3 hours. I just putting different, I'm not, it's not a big bag of chips now. It's, a protein shake or something, or it's greens, or, a piece of meat. But if you can do it, I think intermittent fasting combined with some sort of workout program is good for weight loss. I totally am on board if that's something that someone thinks they can do. I don't disagree with that.
And that's, and I mean, that also underscores the point too, that a lot of this is going to be what works for you to be able to get into that calorie deficit in the long term. There is some freedom in that, like keto is a big thing. So people think, oh, if I want to lose weight, I got to cut out carbs and have my insulin be next to nothing. It's like, no. Everything is going to balance out in the end. Intermittent fasting worked for me because it put me in a calorie deficit, because not eating for 16 hours of the day, and that 8 hours, I wasn't eating as much as I had been throughout the entire day. I was just naturally eating less, so less calories, I lost weight. But that still, even though I found that to work for me, I still had to suffer through hunger pains up until my eating window. There had to be some sacrifice there, and I've pushed it all the way. I've done a 72-hour fast. That's not very good for if you're looking to build muscle or anything, but it was good for prayer, and for also just learning to deny my flesh and, work on that discipline. But people want an answer that is to minimize their suffering. And it's like, if you're going to lose weight, if you're going to live a healthy lifestyle, there will have to be some sacrifice at some time. You can't get around that.
Yeah, there's this pleasure element to eating. I recently, I forgot what it was, but I was thinking, because I've been trying to cut out sweets, for example, the super sweet, fatty stuff like ice cream and donuts. Maybe it was something like that. And I just thought, wow, I have a really strong feeling. I want to act on it. And then I thought, no, you know what? This feeling will pass and I'll stay on my, what I really want to do. I think there is this thing that happens with our eating, that we get these feelings, these really strong feelings of desire. And because we know we'll get pleasure in that moment, like Derrik was saying. And if we compare that to, for example, things that were more strict within our Christian churches, for example, well, we could be sexually immoral and have pleasure, but we choose to have self-control. But then,
Yes.
we don't think about it in the same way when it comes to food,
Yeah, which is interesting because the fall involved food at the end of the day. Is
Yeah,
fruit from the tree of the
that's a
knowledge of
good
good and
point.
evil. So
Mhm.
go figure. And it was probably looked healthy, enough even, but food was involved at the fall. So, I mean, granted, it was what the fruit would promise, but to be like God, according to the serpent that deceived him. But still, I mean, food has been an issue, and so I think that the church needs to reclaim uh, a theology of the human body,
Mm-hmm.
and the church needs to provide an alternative to both the body dysmorphia, and the obnoxious standards of the world, but also an alternative to the other problem in the world, that is nonsense about be healthy at any body weight, and fat acceptance and all this stuff. That's worldly too, because that denies basic science about obesity related illnesses. And if the church is going to speak out against the science denial of this gender LGBTQ madness, you can't, on the other hand, say it's the same thing if you're embracing all this body positivity, fat acceptance stuff too. That's just as much science and reality denying, and we know better. And so we don't need to make those compromises. So we need to get rid of our Gnostic tendencies to discount anything to do with the body, and then quote 1 Timothy 4:8 out of context to make a joke about how fat we are. And then what we need to do is create an image, because I think it's just like the church needs to do better with our own marriages as well, right? The church doesn't need to be getting in divorces at the same rate as the world does. I know that has happened to people, and I get it, but we can always do better with the marriages that we still have, right? Um, and so whenever you get married, we need to have those be solid marriages, right? I mean, I married a woman who had had a failed marriage, but we have been married for 22 years and we're the happiest married people I know. So we need to do better, right? At marriage. But just like that, we also need to do better with dealing with the human body than the crazy Gnostic stuff that's plagued the church, and this fat acceptance stuff that's in the world that's reality denying, and all of this superficial, unrealistic body type images that the world is throwing on us. And the church needs to create a space where we can celebrate bodies as God intended them to be, and all of us as Christians being the best stewards of our body that we can be. And that even includes people who have disabilities, and people who are handicapped. I post on Facebook people, who are missing limbs that are out there way stronger than I am. They're clean and pressing more weight than I can with two arms with one arm over their head. And I'm like, dear Lord, I've seen a guy with no legs run faster on his hands than I can run. It's amazing what people can do. So then no matter what your condition is, you can always do something to improve your physical body.
Yeah, and also one thing that strikes me about this too is people and praying for healing. And I'm all about, the Lord can heal if somebody prays for it, if he desires to. But I just think about what Johnathan talked about earlier about the issues he was having both physically and mental that he doesn't have anymore. And when I was my heaviest, I had plantar fasciitis, I had heel spurs, I had shin splints, and my knees were so bad that you know, when I lived in a split level house at the time, just going up into my living room was like agony on my knees. And now I lose weight and I don't have any of that anymore. And so it just reminds me of a time being at church where this guy, you know, gosh, he was a great guy. And I don't mean any disrespect, but he was about 400 pounds and he was having health issues that he was wanting us to lay hands on him and pray about. And, you know, I'm just thinking, when my knees were bad, there would be days where I'm like, Lord, please heal my knees, because they just really bug me. Getting out of bed in the morning is just agony on my heels. Like, please heal me. And it didn't come. But then I lose weight and it's almost like, thank you, Lord, for not healing me, because I'm glad I got to do this and see what, you know, taking care of my body, the benefits of that. And I get to tell other people about that too, you know? So I also, you know, Jonathan, as you're talking about that, you know, it's like, think about all the people praying for healing, but it's in their hands that they could very well have control over the things that they're praying for physical healing for.
Yeah. It was interesting when my dad was dying of cancer, and everyone was praying that he would be miraculously healed. My dad said, I deserve this. I smoked 3 packs a day for 45 years. Forgive, you know, heal me miraculously because I have it, you know, because it's not like I don't have it coming. My dad was like, of course this is what happens. And I knew that this was going to happen. It says there on the pack that this was going to happen. His dad died of cancer. It's like, that's why I quit. I used to smoke. That's why I quit smoking. It was like, yeah, this is inevitable. And my dad was like, I'm going to die of cancer. So really not much point in quitting, but he did anyway, just to make my mom feel better. But it was like, and I bring that up to say this, when it's one of the things that kind of bothers me and is when people ask God to do certain things, not in spite of what they do to themselves, right? They do all of these, whether it's in their personal life, in their relationships, or with their health or whatever else, they're doing all the things that you should never do in all of these instances. And then they're asking God to bail them out after they've gotten so far into it when they knew they shouldn't have been doing those things in the first place. And so, yeah, I'm all for God healing and I'm all for prayer and I'm all for praying, but pray that you make the changes that you need to make so that this is not a problem for you anymore. And do that before it's too late, like it was for my father, who should have quit smoking decades sooner than he did.
Yeah, like the Christian worldview is some Christians think, oh, I have all I need to know in the Bible. And, you know, I don't need psychology, I don't need science, you know, but it's like, how do you not think that, you know, God doesn't have this knowledge, you know, of how our bodies work, right? So if God is behind how he designed our bodies, then why wouldn't he want us to know how they function, and why wouldn't he hold us responsible, right, to do the right things with our bodies?
Yeah, we're supposed to glorify God in our bodies, is what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we're bringing God glory. You know, our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And I know for the Bible nerds out there, 1 Corinthians talking about meat sacrificed to idols and temple prostitution and all that stuff in 1 Corinthians with the issues. But it still says, you know, you're not your own, you were bought with a price, to glorify God in your body. And again, food is actually related, even though Paul says it's not really a thing. We know an idol is not a thing in the world and all that. But you think that the context limits the range of what that means with just about fornication with temple prostitutes or whatever, as if not doing that's the only thing that you could do? No, it's a general principle to glorify God in your body. And of course, like I said, the body is a gift. And so we need to steward it so that we can be fit and healthy for the tasks of serving God and serving our communities through the local church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's not like me and Pritchett are here saying like Christians need to go out and get a 6-pack, you know, like.
No, but it's inevitable. Yeah. It is an inevitable byproduct of, like I said, I work out 3 hours and 20 minutes a week. if you total up all the time, I've recorded all my workouts, whether I work out 4 days a week, 5 days a week, or 6 days a week. It's the same number of reps and sets and reps, and it's the same 3 hours and 20 to 3 hours and 30. There's 168 hours in a week, by the way. And because I work out at home, I can do it while I'm watching television, like Susan does on the treadmill. So yeah, I mean, it's like I've added nothing ever since I stopped going to the gym. I've actually done better. I've never been this consistent for this long in my entire life. And I've added nothing. When I started working out at home, I've actually taken away the gym, which was, driving there, spending an hour there, driving home and getting cleaned up and all of that. I've actually simplified my life by not working out at the gym. And I'm a big advocate for home workouts, but go to the gym if you love it. I just, I don't care about it anymore. But like I said, even if you do 3 to 5 hours a week, you have 168 of those things, right? You have 168 hours a week, just like everyone else. And so, what are you doing with all of that? Don't tell me that you're busier than I am. Not to boast or anything, but I'm the executive vice president or the vice president of academic affairs of the 7th largest seminary in the world. And I have 2 teenagers at the house. Right. And, busy, right? We're all busy, but you can still have, 3 hours a week to do better. So, I mean, and like I said, I'm not bragging on myself or anything. I'm just saying, I understand having a lot going on, but every time I have examined someone's life in the past who told me they had a lot going on, I found the time in their life when I go through their schedule. So
my husband, he works, he's an engineer, and really stressful job, long hours, comes home to 2 kids that are 6 and 8. And he's tired when he comes home, and they're so energetic.
You'll miss them at 6 and 8 when they're teenagers.
Oh my gosh, yeah, they're so cute. But we have the tantrums and the emotions and the crying. But
yeah, that doesn't go away either.
I know. That's what I hear from parents, and I thought it did go away as they get older. But
well, no, the crying becomes more whining than crying, but it's just whining is not an improvement.
Okay, so my husband finds 2 days during his lunch break, his job, like just employees find like an hour and a half to go to a park and play soccer. Yeah. So that's his exercise. 2 days a week. He runs like 4 miles each time. So that's another way, right? Like he loves doing that because it's so fun for him.
Yeah, if I don't do it at home at the house while I watch television or whatever, or listen to a podcast, I do it on my lunch break here in my office. You can see little gym stuff back there in the back, and all of my Theology Geek Fitness videos. I record all my workouts that I do for my patrons, and then take clips for the channel for exercise demonstrations. All that's here in this office. Now, those people don't have an office job, but I mean, like I said, you can always get up an hour earlier, or go to bed an hour later or whatever to work it in. But I've always found time for people. They just is all about want to. But Ephesians 5:15-17 says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise. And of course, that's go back to the wisdom corpus if you want to know where wisdom is to be found. Making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, right? And you want to learn about what's wise and what's foolish, go read Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, and Job. And then, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And so I love that passage. It's kind of a generic life verse passage from the book of Ephesians. It gives you this panorama of God's purpose in the church through Christ. So,
yeah, that's a good Bible verse to tie this in. I think like moms, for me, I could just fill up all my hours with like watching too many shows or like just doing so many chores. Like that's why you have to get out of the house, because there's always just more to do in the house. It never stops. But the way that I've found is I tell my husband, I need 1 hour. I need alone time, because I'm with my kids the whole time. They don't go to school. They're homeschooled. So he'll watch them for 1 hour, and there I get to like just have quiet time where I'm not answering questions, and it helps me to get ready for like putting the kids to bed and all of that. So it's helpful to get your spouse involved, if
Yeah.
especially if you're a woman. Yeah.
And you definitely always, I've always tried to make it a point to get especially now that, with the homeschooling that we're doing, I always try to get my kids away from my wife because, she's around them plenty during the day because of the homeschooling. And I'm sure that she drives them as crazy as they drive her. Probably not as bad, but I mean, they drive her insane sometimes. Oh, we love our kids; they're great, but I mean, you just need a break. So, dads, give mom a break. So, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Did you want to share, Derrik, what works for you? Like, are you a morning person? How do you fit in your exercise?
Well, like I told you before we started that I'm up at like 5:40 to clock in at work as soon as I possibly can so I can get off after. So I'm not a morning person. I'm an afternoon, evening, night person. So essentially on my workout days, it's as soon as I clock out, I'm off to the gym. I know a lot of people can't do that because it's like if they don't do it in the morning, they're not going to do it. But I kind of just had to develop that discipline myself. And every day, unless it's, the middle of winter during a blizzard, I work from home. So on my lunch break, I get a half hour. I go walk around the neighborhood and I can usually get a little more than a mile and a half in, and if my Fitness Pal is anywhere accurate, that's almost 200 calories right there. It's probably a lot less than that, but still, and so, yeah, I try to keep moving as much as I can. My job is I'm paying claims. So sometimes I'll do this thing where I'm like, okay, pay 10 claims and then do 50 push-ups, and then it's back on it, just to keep active, keep moving throughout the day. Cause, eat less, move more to lose weight. I kind of just got into that so much to where it's like, I always want to be doing something, And so I even found a way to incorporate that during my work and even set goals with that. So just whenever I can get it in, but whenever I have my kids on the weekend, I don't really go to the gym because Planet Fitness doesn't have a daycare. So I'll go walk with them, I'll take them to the park and play around with them, just always staying active. Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw that I was holding up my pedal station. If I wish I had known these things existed when I first started walking, because now like 90% of my cardio, unless I'm going on a walk with my wife or the family goes for walks every now and then, but 90% of my cardio is at work. So if you have a desk job, after about 3 hours, you finally figure out that you can hold your upper body stationary and do all your typing and everything. And then it becomes, you don't even notice. Like the second I sit down, I'm pedaling and I don't even think about it anymore as a habit. And so I have been pedaling for my cardio. That's like 90% of my cardio. I hardly walk. I wish I'd have known about these little gadgets. You can get it for like $25 at Walmart or whatever. But if you have a desk job, that's as good a cardio as anything. It's just
what did you say it's called?
I don't know it's just a what's called a pedal station.
Okay.
And I think Walmart has one for like $25, and like I said, I it's cheaper than a treadmill, and I'm sitting here anyway, and so that's like most of my cardio. So I'm always moving, burning something. And so, I try to maximize my time, because what I was doing when I first started losing weight was, now if you don't have a job where you're stationary all day, then I understand that. But for those who do have a desk job or something like that, I wish that I'd have known about this, because of all the time that I had to spend walking outside of work that took away time from my family. But I think about all the time that is given back after that 6 months of trying to get in shape and stuff, because I've gotten back more, and I'm more active with my kids now than I was when I was at my heaviest. So.
Yeah. And it just kind of underscores the whole point that there are some people might have to get creative, but if it's something you really want to do, you can find a way to get up and move more. Right.
Hmm. Okay, so we've been talking about a lot of practical advice, and we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think it's worth talking because there is this emotional element to this. A lot of people do deal with insecurity. So, what would be a like good and appropriate health feedback, kind of like your story, Jonathan, where, Braxton's dad, he didn't really worry so much about how to phrase it. He wanted kind of to impact you, right? To get you to just think.
I don't know if he even thought about, I don't think he thought of himself. I mean, he's just kind of a blunt guy. I don't think he thought himself as saying something that would hurt my feelings, or that he thought that my feelings would be hurt, and they weren't. He was right. I mean, you don't like to hear it, but he's like, yeah, I mean, but I do think that I have a different personality type than other people, right? Everyone's different. So I think that, you have to know the best approach. There's no, I learned this. I tried to make a video talking about obesity in the church and the problem. And I tried to be as sweet and as just non-imposing and as innocuous as possible, and still offended people. There's absolutely no way, no matter how nice you are, but you should tailor it to the person, but just understand that there's no polite way to tell people that they have an issue with their health, whether it's weight or some other issue. It's still, at the end of the day, a confrontation, but it's good for them because they need to be held accountable. I needed to be held accountable. If somebody had stopped me 2 years before I ended up in the hospital and paying $240 a month on various medications that shouldn't have been necessary. Yeah, would I've liked it? No. But would it have been better for me? Yes. And part of the problem is no one is willing to hold people accountable because we don't want to hurt people's feelings. But be delicate as you can with men or women, but at the end of the day, you have to stay on top of them until they tell you to leave them alone, because if you don't, no one will, and they'll never change. And it's like, even with people that are close to me that I love, I always tell them, I say, you're mad now. You'll thank me when you're done. You'll thank me later. You'll thank me for staying on top of this. You'll thank me for telling you to get back to exercising. You'll thank me for telling you to go on a walk. When you're healthy, you'll thank me. And so I don't care how mad I make people. And no matter how delicate I try to be, and I try to be as delicate. I don't believe in fat shaming people. I don't believe, but I do believe confronting people about issues that they need to get better. And they tell you that one of the things that you notice is they'll complain about their weight and they'll tell you that they need to do something, but then they'll get upset if anyone else tells them. Right. I mean, that's so stereotypical, but it's stereotypical for a reason. It happens to everybody. It's like, oh, I know I need to get healthy. And then they never do. But you're mad at me now. You'll thank me when you're healthy. And just remember that they will, if they actually do it. And some people never will. Some people are content to complain about their health and never change. And you just got to accept that and try to help someone else.
Yeah. I remember when Pritchett posted that video and I watched it and I was like, this is really good. And I think he handled that very well. Like, that was very well said. I could not imagine somebody getting offended by that, but I also saw some of the comments too. And even me, I made a post at the end of December, just, hey, New Year's resolutions are coming up. So here's my advice for weight loss, anybody who's interested. And all I said was get in a calorie deficit and do whatever works for you to be able to accomplish that consistently in the long term. I'm like, that's it. The rest is up to you. Here's my advice. And I got a lot of flack for that, and I had a friend who was sitting there saying like, oh, I'm just a fat tub of lard. And I'm like, well, I mean, you're always talking about that, but why don't you want to like make some steps to help with that? And he flipped out on me, so I'm basically just agreeing with Jonathan in that, sometimes they're just going to be offended no matter what you say. I think it just honestly comes down sometimes to just knowing the person and, make sure that if they are offended, it's not because of you, but simply because of what you're saying.
Right.
Like the truth that you're trying to convey. Thought I had something else to add to that. Oh yeah, and what he said about like usually they're going to complain at some point, right? So it's not like necessarily, I mean, there's probably a way to do this. I've never had to, but there is a way to just take them aside and say, hey, by the way, I'm concerned about this. But usually if somebody wants to lose weight, they're going to say something at some point, and there's your opening right there. Like, oh, okay, so how badly do you want that? You know, like what are you willing to do to kind of set that up? You know, just usually they'll provide you with the in, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to a lady, and she's in her 40s, and she was telling me about how she's always been really thin, and then all of a sudden she's gained a little weight. But the interesting thing was that she was talking about how, like, growing up, she was always told, "Oh, you're too skinny," and then now people will say, "Oh, you're too big." So we're kind of like, well, there are some people that you'll never like satisfy no matter what, you know? So there's those kinds of people that are just like overly critical about people's appearances. Because I have a friend that she was so thin. She was the most thin girl out of all of us. And her father would say, well, don't eat those chips because you're going to get fat. And it's like, oh, that's probably not the best thing for your father to tell you, like, because she felt fat. You know, I don't know why, but it does seem to be a thing where women take it like to they take it to be their identity, you know, like an identity crisis. Um, there are, for example, spouses. Johnathan, I don't know how your wife might feel if you were to just kind of comment, hey, you know, you're kind of getting a belly, you know, I can see your belly or something like that. Like, are there some reservations that you think are wise between like husbands and wives?
Well, you know, and I learned this joke from my wife, but she told me that if your wife ever asks you if she looks fat in something, you can always say no, and you won't be lying, because it's not the clothes that make women look fat. So I mean, yeah, you have to be strategic there. It's, you know, but like I said, there's no matter how delicate you are, it always hurts, right? And typically people know that they need to do something. What hurts is they know that they need to do something. They know they're not happy, but they know that they're lazy, right? And I say that, and I'm not trying to be mean. It's just that's the truth, because if they cared as much as they claim, they would have done something, but don't. And it's not because they don't know that they shouldn't eat 4 cheeseburgers from McDonald's in one sitting with a super sized fry. They know that, they just don't stop themselves. And so, yeah, you have to be delicate, but it's never pleasant to hear it. And with spouses, you know, it's one of those things that you don't have to couch it in weight. You couch it in health, right? You're not healthy. You need to get healthier, right? And they know what that means if they're overweight. But I mean, you know, nobody likes to hear this kind of thing, but if it's with a spouse, you need to be extra delicate. You don't always have to couch it in physical attributes, but you can count it just in health in general. Say we need to get healthier, you know, and make it a thing. For most people, it's, you know, usually couples will do this kind of thing together anyway. Like what happens when someone starts eating healthier, everyone starts, and especially if you have kids, your kids pick up your diet and exercise habits. If you have none, they pick that up too. Is, you know, there's a lot of obese kids to obese parents. You know, this stuff just goes that way. And so, you know, you could do those things together. And I think it's a lot better to do that together, because trying to get friends to be accountable with you, forget it. Try to get, but family is a little bit easier. Family, sometimes they'll step up and you just do these things together because you're making a family decision that we're not letting this food in our house, or we're not going to go out to eat all the time, or we're not going to have this junk food laying around, or we're going to be more active, or whatever. And if you make those decisions as a family and do them as a family, it's a lot easier. Like, we'll sometimes, you know, I've got gym equipment enough for everyone in the 4 people that still live in the house, so we can do it together, right? Or we can go on walks together, and they can't go get, you know, a bunch of candy out of the kitchen because we don't keep it in the house anymore. Things like that.
Okay. So let's should we just do like a, what is it, rapid fire? Is that the phrase? What's the phrase where you just go through all the questions like super quick?
Yeah, rapid fire.
Rapid fire, like from my social media, I got some questions, especially on my YouTube community tab. So let's go real quick. Jeff and Sherry Francois is asking, what do you think of the currently popular practice of not eating after dinner on one day until lunch the next day? I think that is referred to intermittent fasting, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
Yeah, it's if it's a tool that you can stick to without any sort of like some people I know, they tried it, and what happened is they were so hungry that by the time their eating window came, they just indulged and it was no help for them, right? It's not for everybody, but if it's a tool that you can stick to and it keeps you in a calorie deficit consistently in the long term, I say go for it.
Yeah, I'm for it if you combine it with, because like you said, one of the things is if you just eat a caloric surplus within an 8-hour window instead of a 12 to 16-hour window, you've done nothing with it. But if you can stick to the window and stick to a caloric deficit in that window, and if you actually work out fasted, that seemed to do a lot of wonders for people as far as speeding up their weight loss. So it's good if you do it right. If you don't do it right, it's not worth anything. You're just eating the same amount of food in a less amount of time. So
yeah, and Jonathan can correct me on this if I'm wrong, because I think he's got more formal education with this stuff. But I would also caution, because there are what I would call fasting zealots out there that do think it is like a miracle thing that everybody should do, everybody must do in order to be healthy. But my understanding is that all the health benefits that you get from intermittent fasting are largely going to be the exact same as just any regular calorie deficit, calorie restriction. So I say use it as a tool if it works for you, but also because it worked for me. So I remember thinking, oh, if everybody tried this, everybody would be skinny. Oh, they're overweight. If only they would intermittent fast. Not necessarily. That's all I'm saying. So just don't get caught up into the hysteria behind it as well.
yeah, if you eat within the window, low calorie dense foods within that time frame, so that you're satiated, a lot of protein, a lot of greens, to where your stomach is full, but it's not a lot of calories, and you only stick with the window, and you get active in some way or the other, I think it is a really good tool. It can work really well, but you have to do so many things right with it, I think.
Yep.
Okay, Pariah asks, what are some effective exercises to do in an enclosed area? Could they lay out an effective meal plan for those already out of shape?
He's definitely got the whole like confined area thing with with his bands and stuff, so I'll let him take that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I cook most of my food that I eat in a week. I cook it in 45 minutes on Sunday, and that's mostly waiting on the rice cooker to finish, and I prep my meal and my greens, and I put them all in my trays, and then I'm done. I have a whole video on my channel on that. I have endless videos on my Theology Geek Fitness that show over 101 different exercises that you can do in a confined space with resistance bands. I demonstrate how to do other exercises with other types of home gear, like a suspension trainer. It doesn't take much. I have a whole video. $25 at Walmart can give you everything you could ever want with a suspension trainer and a couple of bands, and you can do everything that you need to do, because people overcomplicate workout routines. Routines should be very simple. There are certain fundamental basic movements. You have a horizontal push, a horizontal pull, a vertical push, a vertical pull, a squat, a hinge, a lunge, and a carry. And every single exercise that you can think of is a variety on one of those movements. So basically, I just keep it simple. I do my vertical pull. If you can do a pull-up, do that. If you can't do pull-ups, do a lat pull down with the resistance band, with the weight, with whatever pulley machine at the gym, whatever. Horizontal press would be, even if you're laying on your back, it's more vertical, but it's still a horizontal press. A chest press or a chest fly is another chest exercise. But for the vertical push, you want to do it like a bench press or a chest press. You can do that with bands, bars, whatever, doesn't matter. Or you can do push-ups, vertical press. A horizontal press. a squat is a squat. It's like you're sitting in a chair. And a lunge is a variation of a squat, right? It's just a one-legged squat if you want to treat it like that. Carrying grocery bags, carry something heavy, right? Rotation is like if you did Russian twists or something. There are all these exercises that you can think of, but they follow those basic patterns. A hinge is a deadlift, or a kettlebell swing or whatever, where you're hinging your hip, or a glute bridge that you don't even need any equipment for at all, a hip thruster, any kind of hip. Those are the basic movements. So I keep my routines very simple. I do just the basic movements, and I do 3 sets of 12 on the basic movements for upper body and lower body. And then I do some what's called isolation exercise, like calf presses and bicep curls and tricep extensions and stuff. But routines are, people overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. Just do the foundational movement patterns.
Oh yeah. Like I can't answer as far as an enclosed space, but just to kind of piggyback off that, I do about the same basic 6 lifts every week that I go to the gym, like 3 one day, 3 the other day, and then some variation or isolation in between. Yep. It can be very simple.
Okay, so a little bit going off of that topic, Heaven Bound is asking, what are the best body weight exercises for building muscle?
No, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the two body weight, I love body weight exercises. I consider, like with my dip bars or my pull-up bar, that still counts as body weight. So does suspension training. But I still think you can't beat just doing pull-ups and chin-ups and then body weight squats. I mean, if people just do those, and I get it that, I mean, pull-ups are hard. Not a lot of people can do pull-ups, but you do need, you can still do rows, right? The problem with body weight exercises, if you don't have any equipment at all, is that it's hard to do your pulling movements. It's hard to do rolls unless you hang off the edge of a table or something. So body weight's good for legs and for chest, and you can do some tricep dips and stuff off of a chair. But pulling movements for your back are very difficult to do with just your body weight. That's why you need like a pull-up bar, or I tell people to get a resistance band so that they have something to pull against to work their back muscles. But body weights, the best exercises to build muscle is just a body weight squat, a body weight pull up or chin up. And you can get a resistance band to assist you with that. If you have like a doorway pull up bar, tie a band to it, step in the band, and it'll bounce you up until you can do it on your own. And then push ups.
Okay. And Jesus Rodriguez is asking, how do you do it unto the Lord and or to the glory of God, this healthy living?
Well, the same as you do anything, like when you're singing worship music or using the bathroom. Everything that you do, you should be doing it, number one, out of worship and thanksgiving to God, no matter what you're doing, even if it's just for being alive. I mean, we ask God to bless the worst food on the planet, and we think that we're doing that unto the Lord. So why not? It's the same principle. I don't say that, to spiritualize or to make holy your workouts, you need to listen to the audio Bible or a Christian podcast or anything. I'm not saying you have to do any of that. What I'm saying is what you need to do with a worshipful attitude and recognition that your body is a gift that God intends for you to steward while you're here, so that you can serve Him and your church and your community.
Yeah. And I the only thing I would add to that is, like, it can be an effective way to give glory to the Lord if you do get yourself in shape. People will ask, why did you do that? How did you do that? And you would say, that's just an end to be like, I wanted to be a good steward to this gift that the good Lord has given me. Like, that's one way also to do it for the glory of God. Like, I wanted to steward my body. And there's a conversation right there that you can talk about Jesus, or hold a Christian brother accountable if they're already a believer.
Yeah, very good. Mr. Jamie Rod, switching over to Twitter now, is asking, does yoga conflict with Christianity? So we haven't really talked about like yoga on this video.
I mean, depends. I mean, if you just mean stretching, no. But if you mean incorporating all of the weird religious stuff and all of the things they ask you to think about, then yes. Mm-hmm. If you can do it without all of the baggage and new agey trope stuff that they but I've never met a yoga instructor that doesn't incorporate all of that nonsense into their stretches. And so I want to answer yes, not because I believe that there's any power to it. I don't. But what I do believe is a distraction, and it's a worldview that is in conflict with Christianity. And so stretching is fine, and even the poses are fine. But if you can screen out all of the nonsense that they usually package with yoga, and the spiritualism that's involved in that, then go for stretching. But doing yoga and listening to a yoga instructor prattle on with this new agey nonsense and Eastern spiritualism, yeah, you can't do that.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, Bob Johnson is asking, am I destined to work out, or can I have a donut instead?
I don't understand the question.
I remember that. That wasn't a serious question. He said,
Yeah.
What did you say? Was I predestined to work out?
Oh, predestined to work out. If you're a Molinist, you can say in one sense that God actualized the world, whether you either did work out or you chose the donut, or you can do both, if you want to spoil yourself.
Yeah, I think Planet Fitness is good for that. Workout.
Yeah, the pizza and bagels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are just kind of funny. Recovering Calvinist says, which early church father was the most ripped?
Well, we know that Athanasius was probably a burly guy enough to, I don't know.
Yeah, don't know. Although that gets me thinking about stuff that people said. I'm sure Pritchett could roll on this about like, oh, well, Spurgeon was overweight, but he did great things for the glory of God, or I think they use some other examples too. And it's like, well, there's more to that story too.
Folks, I've got to run, so I won't be able to finish out the Q&A, but I'll let you guys have at it.
We're done.
Okay.
Okay.
So you got to go, Jonathan?
I do.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
We went as long as we could. So thank you
Yeah.
so much, Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me. It's good to see you, Derrik.
Me too. Good to speak with you, my brother.
Yep.
Alrighty. I'll leave information of Jonathan and Derrik below in the description. So thank you guys again so much.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.